Hello, and welcome to the Reykjavík Newsdesk. Today I'm going to be talking about what it's like to live in Iceland before and after you learn Icelandic. This single topic video comes directly from a viewer poll on my Patreon, wherein I let the viewers decide what single topic I'll be doing a video about. And this is one of the many topics that has been suggested so far. So if you want to get in on that, check out the Patreon link in the description below. But otherwise, if you like this content, be sure and like and subscribe. So without further ado, let's get into it. First of all, I need to make a number of caveats here. I can only speak from my lived experience as a very privileged immigrant in Iceland. Yes, I'm queer and I come from outside of Europe, but I'm also white and I speak English fluently. It's my native language. And I come from a country that has a modest amount of social capital in Iceland. I cannot speak on the experiences of, say, Muslim immigrants or Asian immigrants or Black immigrants to Iceland. I can only speak from my own lived experience, but I can recommend for you this excellent video from Jules Chambers and Tabitha Laker on what the experience of being Black in Iceland has been for them. So when I talk about what it's like to live in Iceland before and after learning Icelandic, please bear in mind that this applies to me and possibly people in a similar situation and background as myself. With all that said, let's get into it. So first, I would like to dispel a few myths. One of them is you may hear that Iceland is a homogenous country. This is false. You will find people of many different races and religions and ethnic backgrounds and nationalities living in Iceland. In fact, if you go out to some of the smaller towns and villages in the countryside, you may find a higher percentage of immigrants there, just by dint of there being a smaller population and fewer employers than, say, the greater Reykjavík area. Secondly, immigration is not new to Iceland, despite what you may have heard. People have been immigrating to Iceland since at least the middle of the 20th century, and in the 24 years that I've been living in this country, immigration has been increasing very steadily. I say all this because I wanted to provide you with a little bit of background on the exposure that the average Icelander has to foreigners in this country. Now, Icelandic, of course, is the national language of this country, but almost every Icelander between the ages of 8 and 80 speaks English, and I would say most of them speak English fluently. So if you're a native English speaker or if you're fluent in English, you're going to be able to get by much better than someone who struggles with English or doesn't speak it at all. However, this is only going to get you so far. Unless you're some sort of highly educated or highly trained specialist in a field that is in high demand in this country, only speaking English is probably going to land you an entry-level job that requires almost no comprehension of Icelandic, which means low wages, which means you're going to be stuck in the rental market, which, as I said in the previous video, is very difficult to get out of. With that being the case, you're going to be highly motivated to learn Icelandic. So how do you go about doing that? Well, everyone has different ways. Myself, I watched a lot of English language television with Icelandic subtitles and compared the subtitles to what I heard around me. And yeah, I don't recommend that method. You can also learn Icelandic online, and I've linked to a website to do just that in the description. There's also any number of classes that you can take, although you may find it kind of exhausting to work a full-time job and then go to classes outside of possibly also raising a family. However you start learning Icelandic, in my opinion, the hardest part of learning Icelandic is getting Icelanders to speak Icelandic back to you. A lot of Icelanders will hear your accent and they'll just respond to you in English. Even if you keep speaking Icelandic to them, they'll keep answering you in English. A lot of them. Now, I can only speculate as to why they do this. Generally, I think most of them just hear the accent and they'll think, I'm just going to make this conversation easier for the both of us and switch to English. You know, they're trying to be polite. Others maybe just want to show off how good they are at English. But whatever the motivation, it will make it a lot more challenging for you to be able to learn Icelandic because of this. So you kind of have to insist. At some point in the conversation, you can even say, "Getum við talað íslensku saman?" Can we speak Icelandic together? And then they'll usually stop doing that and will help you out. Just to give you a personal anecdote to illustrate this point, when I first came here, I worked very close to a hot dog stand. And on my lunch break, I used to go to this hot dog stand and I would order my hot dog in Icelandic. And the girl who worked there would answer me in English. And I was kind of disappointed. I wanted to show off how good I was at being able to order a hot dog in Icelandic. So I made a resolution that I would keep going back there every single day until she answered me in Icelandic. It took 3 months, and that's why I'm not so crazy about hot dogs to this day. So you may notice there's kind of a weird conundrum here. Like, everybody to the highest echelons of power recognizes that it's kind of essential for those who move here to learn Icelandic. Those who move here almost universally want to learn Icelandic. Yet, in over 20 years, almost nothing has been done to make the learning of Icelandic more accessible to people. Now, I also have to point out that there are bigots in every country, and Iceland is no exception, and there are, of course, a few bigots who will gripe about foreigners who don't speak the language, perhaps willfully ignorant of the fact that it takes time to learn this language, and it's not something that happens just like when you step off the plane or something, and that people do try. And it's going to take time, even in the best of circumstances, let alone in the sink or swim environment that we have here of learning the language. Also, just to be realistic, even when you get conversational or even fluent in Icelandic, there still will be people who will not understand your accent. There still will be people who will respond to you in English. The good news is that just getting conversational or better in Icelandic earns you a lot of respect from Icelanders around you. I mean, they're aware of how difficult their language is to learn. A lot of them are aware of how difficult it is to get classes or learn the language in some other fashion. They're even aware of people around them who make common grammatical mistakes in Icelandic. Even native speakers of any language aren't going to be perfect at speaking the language. That's just how language works, right? In short, learning Icelandic can open a lot of financial doors for you. It can open a lot of social doors for you, whereas not learning Icelandic can keep you isolated. The resources are there, as difficult as they may be to get. There are people in positions of power who are trying to make things more accessible for people who want to learn the language. I recommend just keep at it to the best of your ability and lean on others in a situation similar to yours for moral support along the way. So that's all for this special edition of Reykjavík Newsdesk. I hope you found this educational and entertaining. If you like the content that you see here, be sure and like and subscribe. And if you really like the content that you see here, check out the Patreon link in the description below, where you can see what kind of goodies you can get just by kicking a little extra coin our way. Which reminds me, I want to thank Corinne Vasquez, Marion Ward, Christopher Hunter, and Marion Moores for being patrons on the $20 level. Laura Johnson and Kimberly McDaniel for being patrons on the $15 level, and Stephen Ellis and Vivi Carvalho Schaffner for being patrons on the $10 level. You folks rock. That's all from me from Newsdesk. Be good to each other.